Hi, and welcome back to the Guitar Learning Show. My name is Kevin.
And I'm Bob.
And today we're going to go over some beginner practice tips to help you accelerate your progress as a guitar player.
Great. Okay. The first one I want to talk about seems very basic. It's just practicing plugged in. If you live in an apartment or a condo, somewhere where you share walls with neighbors, or perhaps you've got family members who aren't really big on your guitar habit, it can be tough sometimes, or it can be, it can be easy to just fall back on practicing unplugged, right? You can still practice your chords, all of that. That has a problem, and then there are some other benefits to being practice plugged in. The problem is that when you're playing unplugged, the volume's not loud enough for you to hear all of your mistakes, basically. And when you're plugged in, you'll find, you may think you're doing great unplugged, and then the first time you plug in, you hear all the problems. So practicing at least part of the time plugged in can help with that. The other part of it is practicing unplugged. I mean, we're not playing electric guitar because we don't want to sound like an electric guitar. So practicing unplugged keeps you from hearing that. So plugging in lets you hear that sound. It's more inspiring, helps you hear progress closer to what your end goal is because you're sounding more like your end goal.
You can't rock out if it's not plugged
No,
in.
you can't.
I mean, you just can't.
Yeah, I don't think Pete Townsend was ever doing windmills with his guitar unplugged.
Probably not.
But yeah, so it's just a lot more inspiring. It lets you fix mistakes earlier in your progress. There's just all sorts of benefits. And I know everybody can't practice plugged in all the time, or even if you can't be as loud as you want to be. But definitely spend as much time as you can practicing electric guitar plugged into an amp.
So the second tip we would like to go over is learning all of the notes on the low E and on the A string. The bottom line is, at some point, as you learn the guitar and as you learn different things and learn songs, you're going to have to learn all of the notes on the fretboard. And that can take a very long time. However, if you learn the low E and the A string, there's some tricks that will help you to know the notes also on the D string and the G string. And of course, this very bottom string, the high E string, that is exactly the same as the low E string. So if we learn all the notes on the low E string, then we'll automatically know all the notes on the high E string. So let me show you what I'm talking about. The third note on the low E string is a G. And if you go over 2 frets and go down 2 strings, it's basically the 2 over, 2 down trick. You also have a G note. So you have a G here. 2 frets over, 2 strings down. This is going to be on the D string. And that's a pretty easy relationship there. It's just there, there. And that works for every single note all the way up the low E string. So your A is here, 2 frets over, 2 strings down, A there, B, C, D, E, F, and we started on G, so I'll end it there. And thankfully, we can use the exact same trick on the A string. So this note here is going to be your C note just below the G. So we're on the 3rd fret of the A. And then if we go 2 frets over, 2 strings down. So C here, C there, D here, D there. I'm not going to put you through all of those. However, you now can at least find notes on those other 2 strings. And then the only thing really left to memorize is that B string. So if you can start out by just memorizing all the notes on the low E string and the low A string, you'll be really, really far ahead of the game at that point. You'll be able to do a lot more with your guitar than if you don't know those notes. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing I'd like to point out is, of course, once you get up to the 12th fret, we're just at the octave. So the low E string played open and then played at the 12th fret is just the E note again. Same with the A, and same with all of them going all the way down, okay? So once you get to the octave, you're basically just repeating the same notes. I mean, the G is going to be here, and the A here, and so on.
Yep.
So I highly recommend that you learn those, and then that will help you as you go forward. And what do we have next?
So the next thing I wanted to show, and this is a really quick one, it's what I call the reverb slap. What I mean by that is it can be hard to get your reverb levels right when you play a chord. So if I play my G, there's a lot going on there. It can be hard to kind of get what reverb level you have it at.
Sure, I always have trouble with that.
Yeah, so just lay your fingers, don't fret anything, just lay your fingers across the strings and give it a quick slap. And that lets you hear, it isolates, it takes all the other stuff out and you just hear the reverb. So if I do this, I can hear I have a little bit of reverb. And you want to turn up the great reverb on the Bad Cat there?
We're at 12 o'clock now.
Okay.
12 o'clock on the reverb.
And you can really hear the reverb trails at that point and lets you just set it at the level that you want it at without trying to figure it out with everything else going on.
I mean, as long as we're doing it, let's go.
Let's go all the way
up.
up.
Let's go to 3 o'clock and see how that is.
Sure. Yeah, that's getting...
All right. All right.
That's getting to be playing alone in a stadium level of reverb.
Pretty much.
Okay, what do we have next?
So our next tip is going to be to learn the caged system, or at the very least, learn the caged chord shapes. So caged itself is a very long lesson. But what I'd like to do is just demonstrate where the chords originate and go over a few of the shapes and show show some of the benefits of knowing the shapes. Okay, so for instance, it's helpful to know your open chords before venturing into the caged shape. So for instance, let's go with an open C chord. Now, that C chord can be moved all the way up the neck and be a different chord depending upon what what root note we're on. So here, so that 3rd fret of the A string is the C chord, and that's the root note of the chord, okay? And then there's, of course, an E and a G in there to make the entire chord. So that C note on the A string is the root note of the chord, and then, of course, there's an E and a G to make the complete chord. If you were to move this up the neck and play it here where your ring finger is on the D note, it's now a D chord. The only problem with this is that if we play this, that doesn't sound quite right. So to make this sound right, we now need to use the pinky. So we make the same exact shape as we had, but we use the pinky, the ring, and we use our middle finger in the same way that we would make an open C chord. And now we take our index and we bar. And so that's a D chord. And then we go up 2 frets, same exact finger placements, same exact finger placements string-wise. Anyway, the whole point of all that is this. The root of the C shape of that in the cage system, the root is played on the A string, and your pinky is playing the root. The low E is not part of this shape. So when we're playing this D chord, there's our root, and our other root is down here on the 3rd fret of the B string. So, just for starters, I mean, we also have 3rds and 5ths in here, and we're not going to get into 3rds and the 5ths. But you know that if your root, if you know the C shape of the caged chord, your root here on the A string is a D note, and then you play it down here, you know that your middle finger is going to play the 3rd fret of the B. So you know that's also a D. So D here, D here. And that works the same anywhere. Let's go up to the 10th fret, and that's a G. And then down here on the 8th fret of the B string, that's a G. And really, if you know these shapes, they help you find other notes in your chords. And over time, that will help you to learn the fretboard. For instance, you get to learning that, oh, the 8th fret of the B string is a G. Or you learn that the 10th fret of the B string is an A. You know, things like that. We all know our open E, which is played like with your ring finger is on the A on the 2nd fret. The pinky is right below it on the D string, of course 2nd fret also. And then your middle finger is on the G of the 1st fret. And we play all 6 strings. And that's our open E chord. But we can move that E shape anywhere up the neck and have a chord. So because we're using the low E string is your root note of the chord, okay? With this particular chord shape, because you're using all 6 strings, you actually get 3 of the root notes at different octaves. So let's just move up the neck a little bit and I'll show you what I mean. We're going to keep these fingers in the exact same place and we're just going to slide up to the 8 note on the 5th fret, okay? But we're going to bar down our index finger. So now we have an A chord and we know that we've memorized the low E string, so we know that's an A. And then we know, based upon the 2 frets over, 2 strings down trick, that that's an A. And then because the low E notes and the high E notes, the low E string notes and the high E string notes are exactly the same, we know that that's an A. So we can go A, A, A. So we have those A's at different octaves, okay? And that's one of the benefits of doing that. So I recommend learning the cage shapes, at least in the beginning. Just learn the shapes to help you learn the notes on the fretboard a little bit better. And as time goes on, you can learn the 3rds and the 5ths, and you'll have even more of the fretboard under your fingers. So.
Yep. And that's the key. And if you know, and I know you're going to talk about bar chords in another tip, but if you know your E string and A string bar chord shapes, that's the E and the A shape of the cage system anyway. So you're 2/5 of the way there. Okay, so our next tip is just a quick tip about setting the tone on your amp. Now, we all know the difference between our bridge pickup and our neck pickup. So the neck, and then we go to the bridge. And the bridge it's much higher pitched. It can be a little harsh at times depending on the guitar. But if you set the tone to get the amp tone sounding the way you want for the bridge pickup, when you switch back to the neck, it's going to be too dark because you have your tone control. You can turn the tone down on your bridge pickup a little bit. This works especially great in like a Les Paul or a Tele Deluxe style that has separate tones for the bridge and the neck. But you can take treble away from the bridge pickup, but you cannot add it back to the neck pickup.
Sure. All right, and so the next tip that we'd like to go over is to learn how to play bar chords. Yeah. And when we first learn to play guitar, we are taught the open chords, and a lot of songs, we're able to play a fair amount of songs right away because we know some open chords. And the benefit of the open chords is you don't have to have as much finger strength because making the bar it's challenging, and moving the bar around. I mean, you have to contort your fingers a little bit differently. So as beginners, we tend to shy away from the bar chord. And quite honestly, when I learned how to play the bar chords and really started practicing them and getting better at them, it really opened up a lot more songs for me. And I think that it not only opened up the songs, but some of the songs became easier to play. For instance, moving open chords around can be challenging because you're having to move your fingers from, say, let's say a C chord, and completely move all of your fingers to, say, a G chord. Some are a little bit easier, like a G to a D, but then some can be challenging, like let's go a D to an A minor, where you're having to lift up all your fingers and move them. So the bar chords, let's start with an E-shaped bar chord. So you basically start with an open E chord, except you would put your ring finger on the second fret of the A, your pinky just under it on the second fret of the D, and then put your middle finger on the first fret of the G. And that's your E chord. But this E chord, as a bar chord, you can move anywhere. So let's move it over here to, well, I like the A position, obviously. So move it to the A. So the A note on the low E string, because it's the low string, it is your root note. So this is an A chord. Over here, it's an E chord. It's an open E because our root is this open E, is the open E string. Over here, our root is the A note played on the low E. And we can move this to the B note, and it's a B chord, and move it to the C note, and it's a C chord. And you know, it really opens up some things. For instance, maybe you've heard this before. So, and that's not too hard to play as a bar.
Right.
If you were to try to play that as an open chord, I mean, you're going from an A to a B minor, and then to a G.
Well, and there's some chords that you can't. There aren't open chord shapes for.
Well, there's that.
You know, you can't if you're playing. While My Guitar Gently Weeps, there's no C sharp open chord shape.
No,
not
there
that I'm
isn't.
aware of.
No. And with this song, you would still have to play the B minor as a bar chord because same reason.
Right.
So you know, you'd be down here to play the B minor instead of playing it. So the freedom of being able to just keep that bar shape as a beginner, especially, and just move up and down the neck, it opens up a lot of things for you. There's a song that we play in our band right now. It's Where Is My Mind by the Pixies. Now that requires movement, a low E string bass bar chord down to an A string bass bar chord, which that can be a little bit challenging too. So we kind of, you know, that song is not quite as easy as the previous song that we were working on, but so that's a little bit more challenging, obviously, because you have to lift you have to move your fingers from the low E string position, essentially, and move them down to the A string. But what's kind of cool is, you know, and I won't get too much into this because it's supposed to be just quick tips, but a bar chord on the low E string is a major chord, but if you move that exact fingering down one string and you mute the low E, so now it's an A-based bar chord, but it's still an E shape, but it's based on the A string. So you're at a D note now, and of course that sounds minor, so that's a D minor. Another thing I'd like to point out kind of quickly, relative to just moving like that, is you can easily. That's an A major chord, so let's say that's the key. Let's say we're playing in the key of A. That's your one chord. And if you move directly down and play what's called an A-shaped bar chord, which is where your index finger would just play that note on the A string, which in this case it's the D note, and then most people use their ring finger. My ring finger doesn't work as well, so I use my pinky, and I use my pinky to then play the D, the G, and the B string, and that is a major chord in the A shape. So that is in the key of A. That's the 4 chord. So we could go D, and then if we want to move to the 5 chord, we're just moving up 2 frets to the E note on the A string, and that's it. So we've just played a 1, 4, 5 chord progression. Not going to get too much into that, but it's a good point to think about. Mm-hmm. So that's all I got for now on the bar chords.
Okay, so for my next quick tip, this is something that helped me out a lot when I was trying to learn those bar chords. So if we take a look, like a E-shaped bar chord, like you just talked about, the trickiest part for most people is the bar. It's getting to be able to make a good, solid bar. So literally what I did is spent a lot of time just practicing getting the bar. Now, it doesn't sound like a chord, but getting a good clean...
That's a good point.
Yeah, getting a good clean bar where all the notes ring out, that's one of the hardest parts about learning bar chords. So I spent a fair amount of time, just a couple minutes every time I practiced, just making that bar and getting a good clean bar, and then it's much easier to add the other fingers in for the bar chord shape.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Absolutely.
Before we go on, I just want to ask you to subscribe to the channel so you're notified of additional videos as we put them out. We put out generally about at least 1 video a week. And like and comment on this one. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. Share your tips with the rest of the commenters. We would really help us out, and we would really appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you have any suggestions for videos that you'd like to see, please drop them in the comments. We'd love to have that feedback and be happy to put something together that you'd find interesting.
Okay, so what do we have next?
Okay, so the next tip I have for you guys is to record yourself playing. I don't care how bad you think you are. One of the best things that I did for myself, and I had an instructor back then, and he had said, hey, when you go home and practice, record yourself and watch what you're doing. And one of the things you can do is review those recordings, and you get a feel for things that you can do a little bit better, things you can modify, and it really helps in the beginning with your progress, with fixing those, those nagging, gnawing mistakes, because you don't always see and or hear them while you're playing, but when you record and you review it, you tend to pick up on a lot of things. And it's really a gift to yourself 10 years down the road, because you can, and it doesn't even have to be that long. But I'm going to share with you guys right now a clip of me from almost 10 years ago when I first started learning how to play guitar. And I was just trying to learn a 12-bar blues pattern, a very simple one, and play it on my very first guitar, which was an Ibanez RG 6003 FM. And you can hear for yourself what you think of it. Okay, so I hope that wasn't too painful for you. Now I'd like to just play very quickly, play a 12-bar blues for you just to show that I've made a little bit of progress in that time frame. I'm nowhere near where I want to be. However, I feel much better when I look at that and go, okay, well, that's how I started out. And I've put a lot of time in practicing and in playing with the band and in working with instructors and doing different things. And so it's nice to have that reference point. I guess that's my point. So yeah, so let's do a quick 12-bar blues, and we'll see what we think. Okay, so it's a little bit better than it was 10 years ago. So I hope I didn't torture you guys too much with that. So at any rate, the bottom line is we highly recommend you record yourself at the very beginning.
Yeah, at the very beginning. And actually, it doesn't hurt to check up on it. I mean, I caught myself, we recorded one of our band practices, and I caught myself getting really sloppy with my open G chords, going to the open G. I would set my ring and pinky first, and then bring these other two fingers up instead of doing it all at once. And I didn't realize I was, alone and practicing with the band. You're a little more focused on the rest of the band when you're practicing with the band. So I was doing okay alone, but when I recorded myself, well, when you recorded a band practice, I caught it. So it doesn't hurt to record yourself at any point.
No, definitely not. And the bottom line, when we're talking about a chord change like that, because I struggle with that type of chord change. I got small hands. I have an old injury from when I was 10 years old, so my left hand, my fretting hand, doesn't work as well as most people. And so grabbing that G is a challenge. So sometimes I have to get those, the index and the middle finger down first, because I can't always do it simultaneously to play that chord. But if you're strumming down, then you want to get the index and the ring down first, and then put the other ones down, because you're playing the low E and that A string first. You're playing down. So if you at least get those two down, it buys you a split second to get the other two down.
Yep.
Whereas if you do it, and trust me, I did that for years. I did this.
Which is not a G chord.
It's not a G chord. Now, the second strum sounded like a G, because by then I had those fingers down. So anyway, that's a great tip. That's a great point, Bob. All right, so those are the tips that we have for today. We'll be doing a follow-up to this in the future, so please hit the notification bell so you can be notified of that new video when it comes out. And if you would like and subscribe, it would really help us out a lot. Thank you.
And if you comment with any tips that you've picked up over the years, we'll be sure to feature them in the next video and call you out by name.
Absolutely. We'd appreciate that. And thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.